Terrific. Good afternoon. My name is Linda Jackson, and I have the pleasure of chairing the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee for Toronto Seniors Community Housing. Welcome, everyone, particularly those of you who have joined us online. Today, so we're streaming live today, as I'm sure everyone knows, and it's nice to see everybody in their orange shirts. Is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. This is a day when we recognize the ongoing trauma caused by residential and day schools and remember those who never returned, survivors and their families. This built on Indigenous community efforts, which established the Orange Shirt Day in 2013 to honor Phyllis's story, whose new orange shirt was taken from her on her first day at residential school when she was just 6 years old. As providers of subsidized rental housing to seniors, we are entrusted with fostering environments of respect, dignity, and empathy. By learning about truth and reconciliation, we open ourselves to understanding how we can contribute to creating a more inclusive, respectful, and supportive community for all. I would ask that all of us take a few moments in silence to reflect on the importance of truth, healing, and reconciliation, and consider how we can contribute to meaningful change in our communities. I was reminded today that this is a day for reflection and education. And I like to take some time myself on this day to educate myself a little bit further. I spent some time looking at our census data in Toronto to understand the Indigenous population in our community. Toronto is the largest Indigenous population in Ontario. It's the fourth largest in Canada. And although the census data from the city, which is a little bit delayed, says that we have 46,000 individuals living in Toronto. The agencies serving the community estimate that there are closer to 70,000 Indigenous people living in Toronto. And I sometimes think when I look at our data at Toronto Seniors Housing, who are we serving and who are we not? And I guess one of my pledges this year is to work with the team to maybe understand a little bit more about the Indigenous seniors in our own community, and their housing needs. It's not wasn't one of the calls for action, but in any of the reports, there is a recognition that housing and health and social services and self autonomy is actually very connected. So I'm hoping over this course of this year, we're going to be talking about partnerships later in the meeting that we'll talk about that we'll consider this population from as an action from today and today's meeting, and it's a commitment that I'll make myself. Um, and I'm happy to say that Tom is also going to reflect a little bit more on what we're doing at Toronto Seniors Housing with in this regard, especially today. So thank you, everyone. And I would also like to note that tomorrow is October 1st, and it's National Seniors Day. And this is a very important day as well for this organization. It's the day we pay tribute to all seniors who have helped shape our country and who continue to enrich our lives every day. Tomorrow is also Yom Kippur. It begins October 1st, and the start of the next week is Fire Prevention Week. So we've got a lot of important events and recognition. We have a full agenda today, along with a deputation on engagement, partnerships, and communication. And before we get to the agenda, I will actually do our formal um, land acknowledgement that has even more meaning today. I certainly also took some time, and I'd encourage others to actually get outside and think about the land that we're so blessed, and our buildings are so blessed to be located on. Toronto Seniors Housing acknowledges that we are in the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Toronto is home to a vast diversity of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis who enrich this city. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by the Dish with One Spoon, the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations, the Two-Row Wampum Treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch, as well as Treaty 13 and the William Treaties involving the Anishinaabe and the Crown. Toronto Seniors Housing is committed to reconciliation. We honor the land through our commitment, our communities, and programs that reflect and respect its heritage. Our land acknowledgement marks a small but key step in the process of reconciliation and building a positive relation with the Indigenous people. We also have our African ancestral acknowledgement, and I'll just take a moment for that. Toronto Seniors Corporation acknowledges the racism and injustices faced by individuals who are brought to this land involuntarily, particularly those affected by the transatlantic slave trade. We acknowledge the experiences of Black people who arrived in Canada seeking a better life following the abolition of slavery by the British in 1834, while also recognizing the structural, systemic, and individual racism that they encountered, which continues to persist today. The racism culminated in the tragic destruction of Africaville, which was once the largest settlement of the Black community in Canada. Toronto Seniors Housing is committed to recognizing all forms of racism, especially anti-Black racism, and is actively working to combat these injustices. We will now go to our agenda, but Tom, I think, are you going to speak now, or in your? I think in your report you're going to acknowledge that. So we'll keep moving then. Thank you. So we're going to move on to the formal agenda items. Item 3 is the approval of the public meeting agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, can I ask for an approval of the agenda and a seconder? Jim and Lawrence, thank you. All in favor? Terrific. Thank you very much. With all in favor, be it resolved that the September 30th public meeting agenda is presented to the QTech committee and is approved. Well, now we proceed to item 4, conflict of interest. Can I ask if anyone has a conflict of interest? All right, seeing none, we will move on. And if at any point during the course of the agenda you recognize that you have a conflict of interest, just let us know and we'll address it at that time. So we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes. Our last minutes were from the meeting on July 14th, and I'm going to ask if there's any changes or amendments or any comments about the minutes of July 14th. Okay. Hearing none. Can I have an approval of the minutes? Lawrence, seconded by Jim. All in favor? Thank you. The minutes of July 14th are approved, and I'd like to thank Karen for and the team for doing the minutes and doing such a great job on them. All right, be it resolved that the July 14th, 2025 public session minutes are approved as presented. We have our action list, and does anyone have any questions or comments about our action list? Item 6. Again, thank you for taking the action list like quite seriously, our staff, and addressing them. So hearing none, we will move on to the CEO update, and I will pass that on over to Tom.
Great, through the chair, and thank you, and to our QTech committee. Just first of all, wanting to recognize that as Linda did in her opening comments, that it's the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and I want to just take a moment to provide a brief update on of our internal observances of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and how we've used just some of our new kind of infrastructure IT to support this important day. And this year, our goal was to kind of move beyond kind of just the acknowledgement, but actively facilitate the collective learning and reflection. And our internal communications, we focused on kind of 2 areas. One was the significance of the day, in encouraging meaningful discussion on the lasting trauma caused by residential schools and honoring survivors, families, and children who never returned, and also kind of access to kind of information where people can learn and read more, and also Orange Shirt Day. So that's very apparent today that was well understood and heard about the recognition through the wearing of a shirt as symbolizing the devastating cultural loss by and sharing Phyllis Webstad's story. And I guess really something kind of quite new to us for today. and really kind of the centerpiece of our initiative. And Emma's just putting it up on the screen for us. So we have a new intranet here at Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, and so there was a very specific page on the reflections on the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and so staff were able to see here. You could click on your Orange Shirt Day reflection, and oh, there you saw Carol there briefly, and then this is where individuals just wrote down their reflections on the day. So just kind of an added dimension to us, an added meaning to this day for all of us here at Toronto Seniors Housing. And really, it becomes, a bit of a collective, a living document, and it fosters that deeper sense of shared responsibility. Thanks. I also, for today's update, and had mentioned this I guess, a previous meeting, but a week ago around the Build Canada Home. So if you have been kind of listening to the media, one of the big announcements by the federal government was the Build Canada Homes. Not as big as the National Housing Strategy, which was roughly 8 or 9 years ago, but really, I believe, a renewed focus for the federal government on housing. And Prime Minister Carney highlighted this as a central part of the government's housing response, aimed at the financing, building, and accelerating affordable housing nationwide. And some of just the immediate priorities, just to share with the committee: to fight homelessness through transitional and supportive housing, expand deeply affordable and community housing, partner with the private sector to provide housing for the middle class, and build a stronger Canadian housing industry using modern construction methods. And that was modular housing, timber structure. And the Build Canada Homes will become a standalone federal agency in the coming years, and three main functions: build affordable homes, that's plan, manage, and deliver the projects with a partner. So the government actually becoming more involved in that in the delivery. Financing affordable homes is the second, and then third is really trying to catalyze the industry, supporting innovative construction methods like modular, and, as I mentioned before, timber prefabricated homes. And so this Build Canada Homes does not directly impact Toronto seniors housing. I do know that Toronto Community Housing, they were present for the announcement in Ottawa. They are already deeply kind of communicating with the federal government around what does this mean, and so this will be a significant focus for TCHC, but certainly, for Toronto seniors housing, we will want around those developments and what is the possibility for Toronto seniors. We certainly will want to provide our feedback and input to Toronto Community Housing, as required. So just wanted to provide kind of a high level update on Build Canada Homes. And then just and the tenant experience survey. It was originally scheduled to be mailed in October, and so we have temporarily postponed that. As we know, to the postal strike, we've decided to delay the distribution until the postal service resumes. And we just want to really ensure that we have a strong, responsive rate, and and get as much information, accurate information, and confirmation with the tenants and their needs. And so we can notify you once the new mailing date is confirmed. And I also just want to make just one final quick thing. Just want to note that Frederica Gomes is on the call with us today, and just wanting to introduce her. She's the manager of strategic intakes in the deputy city manager's office. So working with Denise Andrea Campbell, who is our city kind of representative on the board. And Frederica, welcome to the meeting today.
Thanks, Tom. Happy to be here.
And thank you, Tom, and welcome, Frederica. Nice to have you here, and nice to meet you. Any questions for Tom? Brenda.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Tom, just a quick thing on the tenant survey. You're saying due to the Canada Post strike, you're delaying the survey. Were people dropping off the results by mail, or is there a reason I'm asking this is I think the strike's going to be longer than people think. And I don't want to necessarily delay the work that you folks are doing. So is there any other way that we can do distribution and pickup that doesn't rely on Canada Post. So for example, drop off boxes in the entranceway or something like that.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda, and through the chair to the committee. I will ask Grant to provide further detail on this, but I think there will be issues around capacity, Brenda, to get that work done, because I know that I was just reading around our rent and rent collection. Those letters now have to be delivered by staff, right, as opposed to Canada Post. So I do think we're going to have to be thoughtful around what the impact is on our staff through this
Okay. So
But Grant, if you have any.
So we actually delivered the survey by Canada Post to our tenants.
I'll let Grant answer.
Okay. Okay.
So just very quickly through the chair and to the committee, the survey is mailed out from Forum, the company that is doing the survey for us, directly to the tenants.
Yeah.
And then there's a paid return envelope for them to send it back directly to Forum. So that, and that particular process would be very difficult or cumbersome for us to try to manage. So we are hopeful if the labor disruption for Canada Post concludes this week, we'll still be able to stay on schedule. However, if it goes longer, then there will be a delay in our distribution of the survey.
So is there any other alternative plans, or we're just hoping for the strike to be over soon enough, which I'm not expecting, frankly. And I think just reading the press today, no one is expecting it to be easily resolved quickly. So what is our alternative? Will it be the survey company will have people deliver it, or some sort of alternate distribution?
There is not an alternative plan at this point.
Okay.
To resolve that. We have done some initial looking at whether or not staff could assist. However, we do believe, and as Tom mentioned earlier, it would be quite cumbersome for us to deliver 13,000 plus surveys to all the tenants, try to gather them back and get them. And it would be quite costly, I think, to try to look at other methods to get it distributed, because it's built into the contract for how it's already been arranged to go through Canada Post. So
okay, I understand.
At this point, we're hopeful that the strike won't go on too long, and that we'll be able to get the survey out as soon as we can.
Thank you, then.
Yeah, thank you. And why don't you just get back to us? I think that the staff need to work with Forum on this one in terms of the not actually impacting the integrity of the survey as well. So there's some reasons to have it a little bit arm's length, I think.
Yes, privacy and confidentiality. Yes, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Brenda, for your comments. And I think at this point we will move on to item 8, which is our biannual report from OACH. And I believe Melanie is queued up and ready to go. Thanks, Melanie. Over to you.
Yeah, thankfully now my laptop is working. So through the chair, thank you for having me today. So this report reflects the continued collaboration between the OACH and TSHC to prevent evictions, reduce arrears, and support tenants. In the interest of time, and given the results are in the report, I will focus on the 2 new initiatives undertaken in this period and explain my recommendation at the end of the report, because this is something new for the TSHC board. So the first initiative was to expand to the senior services coordinators to the Wood Green Tax Link program. So I'm very happy to report that as of August, all of the senior service coordinators were trained and given access. So the Wood Green Tax Link program continues to be a game changer for the OACH, and it is forecasted that the expansion of the program to TCHC and TSHC will stabilize over 1,000 tenancies in year 1 and create time efficiencies for staff. The OACH and TSHC also launched a new case conferencing initiative in August, and so far we have held 2 sessions. So the goals of these sessions is to help foster transparency, peer learning, and practical problem solving between the 2 divisions. These sessions, feedback has been positive so far, with an average of 60 staff attending each session.
Oh, wow.
It was in these sessions. So in these sessions, we provide an opportunity for frontline staff to have discussions with the OACH. And it was where we identified that files were referred to the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee were impacting the arrears reporting for TSHC. So in these cases, referrals are made to the OPGT when the EROs determine that they cannot work with the tenant to resolve the arrears because the tenant doesn't understand what's happening. So the ERO will first attempt to put supports in place to ensure stable tenancy. However, when these fail, a referral is made to the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee. In these cases, there are two ways that it can be resolved. So if the tenant consents to a capacity assessment and fails, the OPGT will gain control of their finances. And this process can take several months, as eliminating all other options, such as family power of attorney, is required first. So if a tenant does not consent to the capacity assessment, the OPGT must open an investigation and in some cases obtain control through the courts. So this takes significantly longer, sometimes up to a year, because even the courts resist granting guardianship unless it is deemed truly necessary. So once the OPGT gains control of the tenant's finances, the arrears can be addressed quickly, and in many cases, they are paid in full. The difficulty rests in the time it takes to get to this point. So during the waiting period, as you can imagine, it's concerning to TSHC because the files are on hold with the OACH and the arrears are continuing to grow month over month, sometimes for more than one full year. So it was for this reason that I made the recommendation that these cases be reported separately to the board and committee to ensure that there's an accurate reflection of tenants' arrears and staff work, as these arrears will only continue to grow and cannot be addressed until the OPGT gains control of the tenants' finances to support them. So in summary, this report highlights the OACH work with TSHC files, as well as the positive collaboration that continues between us to better serve tenants. And I welcome any questions that you guys may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. And I want to thank you in particular for, I see your hand, Brenda, for the excellent report on the Office of the Public Guardian Trustee. You really articulated that very well. And I think that was a request from the board. So thank you for that. And also for Wood Green. And if there's any way that you could let Wood Green know how appreciative we are of that very successful partnership, that would be great. And I'll pass it over to Brenda for further comments.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. One was a question, but also following on your comment, Linda, wonderful information you provided here. And I've had some experience with Wood Green, as you know, in the past. And the tax link service is really going to help them to make them eligible for other services and supports that they may not know they were eligible for. So this is a huge win for our clients, our tenants. And thanks for that. My question was about this public guardian, and certainly my experience and other people's is never very positive dealing with the public guardian's office. So I don't know if you're faced with that too. There used to be voluntary trustees or a couple agencies that were prepared to act sort of representing people who were having problems. Is that still the case, or has that been wound down, or is it just not quite meeting our needs?
Thank you. Great question. So through the chair, yes, we do refer a lot of tenants to the voluntary trustee, and that would always be our first option. So we recognize that going to the OPGT can be very invasive, and it has a bigger impact on tenants because it's sometimes, like I mentioned, not always voluntary. It goes through the courts and guardianship is taken over when there's real lack of capacity. So we would always try to exhaust those avenues first and really save the OPGT as an office of last resort for really the most vulnerable who are really demonstrating a lack of capacity.
Okay. So this would be for people for whom the voluntary trustee arrangement's not working.
That's correct, yes.
And is it working because of capacity issues? Is this what the rub is? Is that either because of dementia or other mental health issues?
Yeah, you hit it through the chair. Yes, that's exactly the reason. We sometimes even have clients who are on the voluntary trustee and their capacity starts to diminish, and the voluntary trustee may identify this program no longer fits this client, so we need to move on. And then at that point, it may come back to OACH because they'll breach their repayment agreement or they'll be unable to pay. So at that point, we would make a referral to the public guardian and trustee.
Okay, so they're prepared to intervene even with diminished capacities, they'll go to the court if they have to.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So
Because that, yeah, that's the catch-22, because if you have to consent to a capacity assessment, but if you're unable to have the capacity to consent, it's one of those circular things that goes on.
yeah, so through the chair, so when we make a referral, we always try before we even do that to get the tenant to consent to the capacity assessment. Because if we get them to consent, like I mentioned, it only takes a couple months, we can get it, and then guardianship is fairly quick. It's when the tenant refuses to consent to the assessment and they have to open the investigation that prolongs the process, because then it goes through the OPGT process, which, especially if it goes to court, can take up to a year. And that's why we wanted to flag these files, because during that time, the rent doesn't get paid. It's usually often what happens is the money is actually in the bank. The tenants are just lacking capacity to make the payments. And then once the public guardian takes over ownership of that money, they pay all the arrears in full, because it's just been kind of sitting there for that year.
Yeah. And is the public guardian's office charging a fee to the tenant? Because for some of their actions, I mean, this is one of the criticisms, is they scoop up people's money. You know, if you have any experience dealing with people in the community other than our clients, is they can be and they're not accountable nor transparent. So people are quite shocked to realize that their money's being scooped up. So do they charge our tenants any particular fee for this service?
So through the chair, so no. So what the short answer is no. So what we do is, if the tenant consents to the capacity assessment, we work with the tenant and we submit their notice of assessment and proof of income to the capacity, I think it's called the capacity assessment office. So they look at the finances of the tenant, and the majority of our tenants are low income, so the fee is waived.
Okay, and
they
don't
have to pay the fee. So we would apply for that assistance for them. And then for people who don't consent to a capacity assessment, that's done once the public guardian takes ownership, but they would look at their finances and determine whether there would be a fee. But in most of our tenants' cases, because they're RGI and low income, it's waived, the fee for the assessment.
Okay, because that can be quite pricey as well.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you, then.
Yeah, good questions, and I think that you're illustrating, Melanie, why it's really helpful to actually have an understanding, and actually to have you to support the staff on this. It's complex, and we're not going to actually solve all of the issues for all of the organizations, right? So, but thank you for that, and I did want to actually also acknowledge that it's great to see that so many staff are coming to the education events, and and that takes the TSHC team also encouraging that. So that's really terrific, and having such positive engagement. So thank you for that. Any other questions, comments from Melanie?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Lawrence.
What is this tax link program of Wood Green? Is it a tax clinic where they assist them in filing income tax returns?
So through the chair, so what it is it's a program that's run through Wood Green, and what it supports is what it does is it will file taxes for tenants, and it will also, but what it gives us access to is if a tenant's misplaced their notice of assessment or needs help getting it, it gets it for us very quickly. So we just need the tenant to sign a consent form, and then we're able to retrieve their notice of assessment within a few days, whereas prior, if you needed to obtain that, and we need that to calculate our GI, it would take months, because it would be a matter of calling the CRA, getting it mailed. It might get lost in the mail. So this is, with the tenant's consent, direct access to support them to gather those documents. But it also helps with tenants who have mobility issues or who have problems getting to a tax clinic, because again, if they work with the worker and they sign the consents, they're able to quickly support them to support their taxes without them even having to leave their home. So it's a really good program, especially for seniors.
Yeah, thank you. You may be already knowing this. CPA Ontario, they also provide volunteer service for filing income tax return. If you approach them, they visit the specific buildings, and they do that such tax clinics as well.
Yes, and
Lawrence.
It's kind of like Lawrence. It's kind of like equivalent to like a representative. So Wood Green has that designation and they can get access, direct access to CRA site. So that's the difference.
Now, even I used to volunteer, I used to visit various buildings, and even if they give us consent, I can, as a representative, access their accounts.
That's right. That's right.
And
Yeah,
there are
that's great.
privacy rules. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
That's
used to
great.
do it in the
Well,
past. Yeah. Thanks.
oh, that's great. Great question, Lawrence. And I mean, it's great too, because Wood Green has many other services for seniors. So having some knowledge of that is actually kind of opening a box of other great services from that organization. So thank you. I don't see any other hands up, but thanks, Karen, for keeping an eye, because I can only see so many hands. All right. So we will thank you again for your report, and we'll hear from you again in 6 months, I believe. So it will continue on that same pathway. We will now move on to our.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Excuse me.
Sorry.
Just a point of information here.
Yeah, no problem.
With respect to tax filing, etc., people under 65, if they are designated through the disability tax credit, are eligible for the $200 a month federal disability benefit. Is there any way for our tenants that are under 65 that we can direct them and give them information about this, or make sure that they file for the CRA designation? It's a complex step, and I just helped 2 people this summer do it. But I'm just wondering what our role is through our staff or community connections to advise our tenants under 65, because it stops at 65, whether they should pursue that.
Melanie, I think you were starting to answer that.
Yeah, I think we are with part of the Wood Green partnership. I know the next phase that we were looking at was kind of the financial literacy piece that may include that. But I also included at the end of my report, it's very new and we're still exploring it, but we are looking to start another partnership with Service Canada. And I think part of that is that they would be able to, I know when we met with them, they want to be supporting people as we're bringing clients to them to make sure that they're getting exactly those benefits that you're talking about, new things that are out there. So it's early days. I'm hoping to report out on it in the next biannual, but we're looking because we know there's these new benefits and how people can know about them and access them.
Well, I mean, not just only OACH, but also just us as an organization, whether we do it through our staff or whether we do it through partnerships with outside people. But it just seems to me that access to information, as you know, is always a problem. People don't know what they don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, thanks for that recommendation, Brenda. I think the team will take that as something to find the right way. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Pricken has his hand up, I think, to answer that.
Oh, go ahead. Please feel free to jump in.
Oh, sorry about that. Chair, Brenda, if you want to email me any information, look at including that in our tenant welcome guide as an insert for residents that could apply. So when they sign their lease about TSHC, we do put supplemental things like that into the package for them.
That would be great, because the uptake has been abysmally low, and I hate to see people not get access to stuff.
Yeah, and maybe in the tenant newsletter as well, Brad, just because sometimes there's a lot of things going on when people are moving in, maybe other opportunities to have that. So thank you, Brenda. We'll take your rich experience and utilize it. All right. So I think we will move on to the next item, which is our operational dashboard. And this one does go over to Brad again.
Thanks, Linda. Through the chair. Pleased to present the operational dashboard for August 2025. If we can go to the next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of the arrears, the vacancies, the weight maintenance, and the pest control. I would note that if you see the green line that appears in July and August, we're able to include Melanie's recommendation into this report and go back and pull the July numbers. So you can see how big that green of arrears is, and those are ones that are sitting with the public guardian and trustee, awaiting for them to get a court ruling or to take over somebody's affairs. Onto the next slide. Again, same. This is with regards to the arrears, and you can see that green slide there, the green slivers there that show There's actually more sitting with the public guardian and trustee, almost double what's sitting with them than what's unmanaged by our staff.
Wow.
Again, we're just making sure that once people fall into arrears, we know quick intervention is what gets them out of arrears and maintains their housing. I would say that there is a slight increase in the arrears this month. Typically happens this time of year just because we have so many staff on vacation during the summer, as well as we have the annual unit inspections. But I did look back at the numbers, and last year for August, the percentage of arrears was 21.4 and it was 1.89 million. So we've actually collected about $5 million worth of outstanding rent with maintaining a sub 1% eviction rate, which is great work by our frontline staff.
Say that again, Brett. $5 million?
So we've, last year for the month of August, our arrears sat at $1.89 million.
Right.
And then right now this year, although it's gone up the last couple of months due to that seasonal trend that I talk about, we are down to 1.3, sorry, $500,000 that we've collected in arrears while maintaining a 1% eviction rate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Next slide. With regards to the vacancies, we've seen a bit of an uptick in the vacancies with regards to that. Again, this is a seasonal trend. We see this every year, year after year. I would point out that between the centralized waiting list and the units with the rapid rehousing program, there's 128 units out of 242 that are sitting with the city to be filled with new tenants for TSHC. And then if you look at the accepted line, this third one from the bottom, you'll see that we have 20 people waiting to move in. Those move-ins would be scheduled for September. The leases are signed, the people are filled, and that's an increase from 5 from the previous month. Next slide. This is a slide that we've included. It's a legal responsibility for us to inspect every unit once a year. This is, we started that process this year on July the 14th. Our end date is November 30th, and this just gives the committee an overview. After inspecting 60% of the units, you can see some of the issues that we found and some of the work that our staff will be carrying out through the rest of the year with regards to various issues, work orders, as well as some unit cleanliness and life safety items that we've noted. Next slide. Maintenance dashboard. Most of our vendor work orders are related to pest control, plumbing, and appliances. You can see the uptick in the month of July. As I said, that's when we began our annual unit inspection process. So we always see that kind of seasonal rise. And then once we get through that, by the end of November, staff will work, and by the end of the year, we should be back to our normal service levels. And next slide. This is the administrative tickets. And again, these are driven, July and August are driven by the annual unit inspection. This is the SSCs and the superintendents working with tenants to go into their units and flagging issues that may require follow-up. Investigation may require follow-up visits by the senior services coordinator. And on the right-hand side, we've provided a list. So 61% of all these tickets are carried out by our SSCs, with 28% through our TSAs, and most of them center around the annual unit inspection or help with their rent review, which is something that Melanie was speaking about earlier, that we're trying to make easier for tenants and trying to provide them various avenues to get assistance, because this is one of the drivers month over month over month is help with making sure that their rents are calculated properly. And I believe last. And this is the pest control slide, relates to the number of treatments that we've been performing, broken down by pest type with the number of units that we've declared pest-free, as well as our cooperation with Toronto Public Health in order to prepare tenants for bed bug treatment. At an upcoming QTech meeting, I'll be bringing a new pest strategy forward with some increased reporting to give the committee some more oversight and some more kind of depth behind the numbers as far as how we're doing, what we're doing, and how we're going to change some things in the following year in order to deliver more efficient pest treatments to our tenants. That, happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks, Brad. Brenda?
Question about pest treatments.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us some context here? Are these numbers a lot? Are they average? Are they within the norm? I have no idea of knowing.
Yeah, great question through the chair. And that's why we'll be revisiting this slide and we'll be providing some additional information. I will say the number of actual units that we treat is much lower. The way that when you're looking at pest treatments, oftentimes units are receiving multiple treatments. So one of the areas we're going to be focusing
Right.
on the next iteration of this reporting and the next QTech meeting will be identifying those people receiving multiple treatments and how we're going to help them and how we're going to try and prevent them from requiring treatments in the future. When we actually look at the numbers, they're very deceiving because we're talking about total number of pests. It doesn't take into account, oftentimes residents won't prepare or can't prepare or don't want to receive pest control treatment. And we end up taking a legal avenue with regards to those tenancies to go to the board, the landlord tenant board, to try and get an order forcing the tenant to allow us in to treat the unit. One of the things that we do when we're doing that is that we have to treat that unit bi-weekly, schedule it. So we know every 2 weeks we're going to send somebody there, and we know that every 2 weeks the tenant's going to not answer the door, not let us in, or not allow the treatment to continue. But it's a requirement of the landlord tenant board that we show that we've continued in our obligation and we've continued to try and work with the tenant to schedule that. So these are some of the things we're going to clear up in the next dashboard that the committee will see regarding pest management and answer those other questions, Brenda, right? Which percentage of the portfolio are we actually treating for pests, right? Because we know when we look at the arrears, our arrears are about 1,000 units that we're dealing with. But when you represent that out, that means that there's 14,000 tenants that are perfectly fine and owe no money to the corporation.
So that's kind of what I'm getting a sense of. I'm trying to get a sense of how widespread our pest problem is. Is it fairly contained, or is it very broadly dispersed, right? And when you mentioned 276 units were declared pest-free, what does that mean in a meaningful sense? I mean, are we aiming for 1,000 units pest-free? Like, what does pest-free mean? That the building, that the floor, is fine, is pest-free? Like, what, in a sense, what are our goals and what do these numbers reflect? I mean, I don't expect an answer right now, but I would just like to get a handle on how big a problem this is.
Great question. And through the chair, pest-free is a really technical term as far as our contract with the vendor goes. The vendor is the one that declares a unit pest-free after they have treated it. And when they declare it pest-free, that is when the warranty for that unit starts. There's a 6-month warranty for the unit.
Right.
So it's misworded a little bit, but it's a technical term that's in the contract with the vendor that indicates when we cease to pay and when the warranty kicks in for those units. And again, we'll clarify that in the upcoming reporting that we'll be delivering to the committee.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And maybe it's just pest-free after treatment. It would be like that in.
Yeah.
It would be a reminder, especially as new board members will eventually come on. I had a quick question, Brett, and it was I noticed the high number of units that were noted as needing cleaning assistance and clutter. How do we we've talked before about like extreme clutter, but how do you handle the cleaning? Like if you're unclean units when in an inspection?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Thank you. With regards to these are what triggers some of the referrals that our senior services coordinators are making to some of our partner agencies and some of the provincially funded agencies in order to get people light housekeeping, as it's designated by a lot of them. And these are where we pick up a lot of our times where our SSCs will be working with this data in order to make those referrals to PSWs to give people the help that they need in order to maintain their housing.
That's great. That's what I was hoping to hear. So that it's a helpful piece. As we get older, it's harder to manage every activity of daily living, isn't it? Okay, thank you very much.
And just also clarify if it's a consent issue as well. If the tenant does not want to have it, doesn't consent to the cleaning, then the agencies will not clean. And I've come across this where people are trying to get things to help people, and through various reasons, mental health, whatever, they're refusing to consent to have a cleaner in. So
if they're competent, it's their home, right?
yeah.
Thank you, Brenda, and thank you, Brad. Any other questions?
Madam Chair, Councillor
I do.
Crisanti has joined
thank you.
and has raised his hand.
Please
Hi.
go ahead.
Hi, thank you, and sorry
Oh,
for
I
the
didn't
late
see you.
join.
I'm sorry, Councillor Crisanti. I was thinking about you with the pest control. Go ahead.
I
That's
know
why.
this
That's
is
why I
this
asked the
is.
questions on his behalf.
Oh, thank you, Brenda. You know, this is a real important topic always, and you know, and I heard some of the discussion on that, but I'm just looking at a chart right now that looks like since June up until August, the pest management part it went from 219 to 276. I'm assuming that means that it's getting a little better. We now have 276 units that are, I guess, considered pest-free versus 219 back in June. Is that what is? Am I reading that correctly?
Through the chair, yes, you are, Councillor.
Yeah, a little.
And when you see that spike in treatments for July and August, again, we rigorous time during May and June, where our integrated pest management team went around and trained the superintendents and the SSCs who are doing the annual unit inspection in order to how to recognize pests so we could deal with them before they became to an infestation level when hopefully it was still manageable. So the increase in the number of pests that we've identified and been treating over the last couple of months is directly related to that training that the staff undertook in the spring.
Yes, and look, for all the years that I've been doing this, pest control has been a real pest. Excuse the pun. It's been extremely difficult to manage. And I just heard earlier too that what's our goal? I think Brenda, you may have managed that or mentioned that. I'd like to see our goal to be 100% pest free. In other words, do everything we can to drive a pest-free building 100% all the time. That may take up a different kind of approach, and I don't know what that approach is yet. It may take some, but more training, more sort of aggressive communication going out that we want to make your building, 100% pest-free, but we can't do it alone. Without you, it'll continue to have these issues. We need you to make it 100% pest-free. You being the tenant, you being the person living in that unit, because a lot of the issues are with respect to gaining entry. A lot of the issues are with the hoarding problem, with cleaning and making sure. So we've got to clean it from the top down. Is there any discussion in the background to manage it in a different way? Because I've always said we continue to do things the same way we've been doing them, we'll continue to get the sort of the same result, right? You can't expect a different outcome unless we start doing things in a very different way, very different. And we got to look at those options. Any thoughts there, Brad?
Yeah, through the chair, Councillor. So we've begun looking at pest management differently. We've worked with Toronto Community Housing in order to get some different levels of reporting out of our tenant database system so that we can identify trends and things like that. And at the next QTech meeting, I'll be delivering a report to the committee on not only the different ways that we're going to begin reporting pest management, but some of the other strategies that we're going to put in place now that we have all this additional level of detail in order to do.
Thank you. So we have a more in-depth report back. I think you've been helpful, Councillor, in pushing this agenda, and I think it's important for us to understand kind of the background of why are there pests in buildings and what are we doing, and what the goal is. So thank you.
Well, Linda, the thing too is unless you see it firsthand, I fortunately or unfortunately saw units and parts of a building. And I've seen units, and I want to carefully choose my words because it's hard to it's hard to watch where you walk in and you see families and children sitting in the middle of a living room with cockroaches running around them. It's unacceptable.
Or seniors, or I've seen seniors who are homebound that have that situation too. So I think it is something that we can aim towards. And thank you, Brad, for keeping working on this.
And the neighbors next to them, because
Well, exactly. I think we have to understand it from a really systems perspective. Thank you very much for the report. We're a little short on time, so I think I'm going to push us over to the next two items that Grant has, which is actually our current strategic goals, and we do have an item for approval, which is actually our approach going forward on strategy, which I'm sure will include something around pest control as well. So over to you, Grant.
Thank you, and through the chair and to the committee. So for item 10, we have the Q2 Strategic Directions Progress Report. The report before you has a combination of the dashboard and some highlights of the dashboard and results, and some of the same items in context of what was just discussed, for example, on the operations. The dashboard is an attachment to the report, includes results around arrears, vacancy management, unit turnover, community safety, some aspects of tenant engagement and programming as well, and some employer of choice, some things with the team and stuff that's happening within TSHC internally, and pest management is also on that dashboard. I won't go over the dashboard in detail other than to say a number of the results on some of the key indicators have been discussed in the context of the more detailed operations dashboard, and some other updates will be coming later in the agenda when the CSU is here and presents their material, their report, and I know also Deanna has an update a little later in the agenda as well. Also attached to this report is the Strategic Directions Roadmap and the progress on the activities, projects, and initiatives. So we had 20 projects or activities planned for completion for Q2 of this year. The progress to report is that 6 were completed as planned, 2 were completed actually ahead of schedule, and 14 had revised timelines. Examples of things completed included the annual report for TSHC, the materials for the annual general meeting and reporting to the city, the terms of reference for the 3 board committees that were reviewed earlier on this year, some work on the enterprise risk management framework and risk reporting, and the succession program was launched. Some revised timelines include the intranet upgrade, the skills matrix for board members, which is something we'll discuss at a governance workshop in November with the board, the future relationship with Toronto Community Housing, including the future legal agreement, and some other policy aspects. I'll pause at this point, just given the time, and take any questions, and then we'll move to the next item when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. And this document was included in the package and circulated and is on the website. Any questions about where we're at? It is a critical time in terms of us actually moving towards our next strategic planning. Okay, I don't see any hands. I don't think I'm missing any.
Just a quick one, Madam Chair. This is for 2025. Is there a time frame for either review for the next year, or is it a time frame whereby we make changes for the next upcoming year or two?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that the next agenda item.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, perfect segue, Brenda.
All right.
Yeah, it's a good time for that, and this actually does actually dovetail to the work that the board did not long ago in terms of looking at that. So I don't think we need an approval for the progress report. I think we'll move on to the future strategic directions and development approach, and we will be looking for your thoughts on the suggested approach. So over to you, Grant.
Thank you, and through the chair and to the committee. So for item 11, it's a report entitled Approach to Developing the Future Strategic Directions. Just want to note Ayushman Banerjee, a business consultant on the strategy and policy team, who has been supporting this work through the last few months, is on the meeting as well today. And I want to thank Ayushman for his support through this process. The report before you essentially summarizes a proposed approach for how we're going to look at reviewing and renewing the existing 2023 to 2025 strategic directions that were created back and approved in 2023. I'm going to walk through this presentation that's on the screen. This is attached to the report and provide context on some of the considerations that we've taken into the approach and recommendation that's being presented here today, and take any questions. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Thanks, Karen. So When we look at the existing strategic directions, and we've done other views, and in the appendix, it actually has a table that shows you where we are. We're lined up to be completed in terms of most of the time-bound activities or projects by the end of this year. Now, this is something that we've been monitoring and reporting quarterly, and that was what was in the report that I just previously did in item 10. At the leadership team and extended leadership team, we've reviewed and reflected upon the strategic directions and the progress we've made as well, and included that in some of our planning work that we've done through the last 3 years. And as the board will recall, on July the 10th, we had a board workshop where we discussed and got a lot of good input and feedback on our existing strategic directions, some of the context upon which the board would look at future strategic directions, and we also had a good discussion around innovation. And even today's agenda has some of the content that was provided and discussed there in more detail later on in today's meeting. If you can go to the next slide. So the previous approach, so how did we develop these back in 2023? And really the work started in 2022. And if you recall, TSHC was very new. The transition had just taken place in June of 2022, and the board and the organization was very interested in getting some strategy in place. Essentially, we had a consultant who supported us with that work. It was Mary Tate at the time, if folks might remember Mary. Mary was part of the transition team, and she had taken the lead on the development of the strategy. In terms of stakeholders engaged, it was quite limited at the time. And if the board and the committee recalls, there was some discussion about how extensive engagement might be required or necessary to inform the development of strategic directions. From a tenant lens, it was felt that the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee would be sufficient. And that was because there had already been a number of other avenues within which tenants have been engaged around transition and post-transition to inform and support the development of a strategy. It took about 7 months to do it, and about $75,000. And this is the current strategic direction we've been working with since then. Go to the next one, please. So some considerations for how we would develop the next strategy or the renewal of the strategic directions. We actually have a team now that can support some of this work that didn't exist back in 2022 and later in 2022 when this work was happening. TSHC has evolved, and we've developed an approach and an engagement with our tenants, for example, and our staff. We have a culture that has evolved since 2022. So we believe that staff can be more involved in the development of the strategy this time than we were back in 2022. The relationships between staff, tenants, the board, and other stakeholders have also evolved. So we have the experience of the last 3 years of Toronto Seniors Housing to help inform this as well. There's more data from different sources to help inform this, including our previous tenant experience survey, our employee engagement survey, our upcoming tenant experience survey, and some of the KPIs and reporting that we've been talking about, for example. And then new emerging issues have become more at the forefront of things we're looking at. We're exploring new innovative research opportunities and looking at how we can be innovative and meet our complex tenant needs. You can go to the next one. So what are the expected outcomes? Well, one of the things that we're proposing is that the new strategic directions or renewed strategic directions will be based on the framework of the current or existing strategic directions. So the context within which we've developed them and have been reporting them. We want to maintain a clear and measurable, achievable strategy, and we feel that the structure that was set up with the current strategic directions allows that to be considered moving forward. The process must still be developed, of course, with looking at data and research and meaningful consultation. And consultation is one of the big aspects of how we are proposing we would expand that for this strategic planning process. We want to clarify the vision. So, the vision that was established back in 2022 and 2023 when the strategic directions were set will be revisited by conversations with the board, for example, and different stakeholders through the process. And then we really believe that tenant staff and other key stakeholders need to have a sense of ownership in this going forward. And we want to make sure there's meaningful engagement. We also have to do this in a timely manner and make sure that it's in place to help support us going forward. So we're looking at a process that would take us through, and I have a timeline in a couple of slides, the middle of next year. Next slide, please. We won't spend too much time on this slide other than to say we see a multitude of different roles and responsibilities for different actors or stakeholders in this. When we look at the board and we see this committee as an extension of that board, This is the route within which and the direction within which we will work more closely on the development of the strategy. But when we look at tenants, staff, and other stakeholders such as the City of Toronto, other partners and partnerships, there is certainly a broad scope of different folks that will have to be engaged. This slide is intended to capture some of the main stages or deliverables associated with the actual process. So we're in the planning phase right now, and we show that as being August through November. A research and review stage coming up later on as well. That's where we develop the next stage for consultations, which would happen between November and March. The consultations themselves would be with some of the stakeholders that I've just referenced in the previous slide. And there's also actually a slide in the appendix to this presentation about that. We would bring that all together with the synthesis and analysis, and eventually translate that into a proposed update to the strategic directions by May through July of next year. The deliverables are those three things on the far right. So an actual updated strategic directions document, similar to what we have today, a new revised roadmap, and a realigned set of key performance indicators, KPIs. The assumption, again, is that the current template would be used. How are we planning or proposing to do this? We're recommending what we're calling a hybrid model, where TSHC, of course, will manage the initiative, lead the research, analysis, and development of the strategy. However, we will supplement our consultation effort with a consultant to help with that work. And you can see some of the different aspects of who would do what in terms of the function of the development of the strategy. On the left-hand side, things like planning and project monitoring will be through TSHC and our team, the research and review. But the consultant would lead consultations, and we're hoping with innovative engagement models and some additional support to actually work more broadly with tenants than what was done previously. The development of the strategy I already noted would be done by TSHC and our strategy and policy team, but we would also bring provisions into how we engage the consultant if we needed additional capacity to do that work as we get later on. And communications will be important, and we'll have our communications team in TSHC to support this initiative. Rationale there for this approach, and I've sort of mentioned it already. Tenants and other partners need to be consulted more extensively this time, we believe, than was done previously. And the use of a consultant to help support this would fill a gap that we would have if we try to do it with the staff that we have. We will leverage our internal expertise and staff knowledge to support this, but it'll actually help make it a more successful engagement with tenants. We have an estimated cost of between $100,000 to $150,000. We have to go through a request for proposal process to actually confirm how much this might cost. And we do have it planned in the budget for next year. Some of the next steps are listed here in terms of what would happen over the near term. As I mentioned, there'd be an RFP. And this is where we are. So at this stage, our goal is to get some if there's any questions from the committee with this approach, and to actually start actioning on these next steps, and also to bring this forward to the board at the end of the month. End of October, sorry. I'm a day ahead of myself. End of October. And I'll take any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. That was a good overview. Questions, comments? Brenda?
In terms of the RFP and selecting the consultant, who will that be directed by? Is that staff, or will it be board committee members?
So through the committee, staff will undertake the process, and will, depending on the outcome of the value of the procurement, it'll either be awarded through staff or we'll bring it forward through committee. So that process is, we're just writing the RFP now.
May I suggest that at some point the committee or members of the board be involved with the interviewing of the consultants?
So through the to the chair and to the committee, we can bring that back for consideration in the process. Thank you.
Because I think we identified some issues about the need for more strategic and more innovative direction. And I want to ensure that that's considered in who we hire. I'm a little surprised that we're still hiring a consultant, as you know, my viewpoint on these things. But yeah, I can see you're delimiting their responsibility, which is good. And all the more reason that I think we should have some sort of input from the board.
Yeah, I would actually, I was going to say the same thing. I think it's typically in strategic planning because this committee actually has some oversight.
That's right. That's right.
It would be, helpful to shore it up. It's very common in other organizations that I've been in that the board has some role in the strategic
Yeah.
planning process. So I'd agree with that. I don't have a big issue with us actually using some outside. I think that sometimes we get a little bit too internally focused if we don't actually have somebody pushing us. But I thought the combination wasn't too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's actually the board's responsibility to be responsible for strategic planning.
So I see Tom nodding, and Grant, if you can take it under consideration, I think we could work with Fareed and others around a combination.
Yes, through the chair and to the committee. Yeah, we will take that back. And I can say with certainty as well that the board will absolutely be involved in the work around the in this committee around the work of the development of the renewal of the strategic directions. And the process I think you were getting at there was more about the selection of the consultant to help with the consultation, which is where we're working on the RFP material right now. The process still has some opportunity to be informed and developed. So it's not a final RFP by any stretch at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Any other comments from board members? I think we looking for an approval for this one?
Through the chair to the committee, yes, we did have a motion on this one, and if whenever you're comfortable to bring that up, Karen can bring that up for the committee's consideration.
That's great. So Lawrence and Jim and myself, let's look at the motion to get a committee member to approve.
One moment, Madam Chair.
We don't probably need to see it. I think it's
in the annotated agenda. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull up the file.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, I think it's a straightforward. What I would ask is if I could have a QT committee member to move the future directions, strategic directions, be approved as presented with some of the comments that have been added. Thank you. All in favor? Terrific. And so, Lawrence and Jim, thank you, and thank you to the committee. Thank you for the work, and just keep us informed. That it's exciting to look at this the next steps. And it will be great to have, I noted, the tenant engagement. We were in a different place a few years ago, and now it will be really great to have more tenant participation. All right. We are now going to move. So with all in favor, be it resolved that the future strategic direction is approved as presented. So terrific. And we'll move on to the engagement, partnership, and communication update. And before we do that, we have a deputation from Bill. And is Bill on the line?
Yes, Madam Chair. He's been
terrific. And I'll pass it over to you, Bill. And deputations are a way for people to speak at a board and board committee about a specific subject on the public agenda. For those who don't know, deputations are timed at 5 minutes and need to pertain to the matters within the board's jurisdiction. And those deputing need to only speak on the subject for which they have received approval. Obey or follow, I don't like the term obey, follow the rules of procedure and any decisions of the board, nobody obeys me, of the board committee chair. Refrain from using offensive and disrespectful language, refrain from speaking disrespectfully of one another, and pursuant to our bylaw 2021, section 419, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including a city employee or corporation employee shall not be discussed in a meeting, and the committee chair can conclude or end deputations if these rules are not followed. We have a very expert deputant on the line, and I'm going to pass it over to Bill.
Well, with that description, I think I'm done. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Hunter, and members of the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee. Thank you for this opportunity, and welcome to fall. I hear wonderful things. I mean, I'm just thoroughly impressed every time I sit in, on one of these meetings, and to hear what is going on behind the scenes and what people are doing. My focus, of course, is on representing tenants and their voices, and so I've had some concerns for quite a while, about the agency, and you've heard me speak of this, over the years. And I think that as the new Community Connect model is being put into place, things are happening on the ground that, to me, don't really align with the things that we've been talking about, at QTech or at STAC or at the implementation table. And so I think, I know it's going to be a process. And a very helpful thing today was being at the implementation table today. It was the first one we've had in 3 months, and it was very refreshing to see that there's a lot of work has been done about putting ideas together to try to bring more volunteers into the process. So I kind of have a question about, like, what is the role of the volunteers? And I've raised it before. Who is in charge of the tenant circles? Is it staff or is it tenants? And so it seems that there's conflicting messages about that. And I certainly, feel that tenants should have more voice. The model is focused almost specifically on the community activity funds, and that's what the volunteers are there for. And what that does, and because it's only focused on that, there's no voice for tenants outside of doing those community activities. And as we hear, there were bug issues. There were all kinds of issues that take place in the buildings that, with some sort of leadership in the community and in that, the tenant circle, to have a little more influence about what's happening in the building. That I think that's something that really needs to be included into the volunteer process. About bringing people on board, because leadership is very important. You want people to step up, but if people are being told we don't have leaders, why should they? So I think a lot of this is messaging, and on the ground interactions, and this is the ground. This is where we are supposed to be connecting, creating good, positive tenant, staff, trusting relationships. And so if tenants are only told that you have a voice with your community activities, it doesn't really work, and it's not acceptable to me. And I did add a few things just for reference, so you could see that even long-term care, they have resident councils where residents have a voice and have status and a say in their communities, not just about what they want for lunch, but about the activities and about how they're being treated and about, other things. And when you look at Toronto Housing, they have a very similar approach where it's about leadership and it's about building in the community with leaders. And so I'm hopeful that from our discussion earlier today, that is something that we will start to build into the process of the Community Connect volunteer process. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you for sending all of the reference material. You're great at a historian as well in terms of reminding us of things that we've committed to. Any questions from board members before I ask Deanna? Deanna is going to do the presentation, and I think she may want to make some comments as well. Brenda?
Oh,
I think you just went on mute.
Right, sorry. Just one point I want to, in terms of comments Councillor Crisanti and Bill have made, seems to me an approach that we might want to consider building in is a form of outreach. You know, our outreach activity to engage people. So in response to Councillor Crisanti, to what other models we could be using with pest control, you know, when you start outreaching to people and engaging them in that sort of reciprocal way, you can get buy-in, you can get volunteerism, you can get people taking it upon themselves. So and I think that links into our concern about the innovation aspect. So if I could just highlight this need for outreach, building it into some of our processes, but also into our philosophy as well. And I think it's worthy in our strategic planning to look at the role of outreach and engagement in a meaningful, practical way.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. I agree, and I see Bill nodding as well. Maybe I'll pass it over to Deanna at this point, who I think is going to do the presentation on our engagement and communications update. And if you have any comments as well, Deanna, go ahead.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Mr. Hunter had his hand up.
I'm
so
good.
sorry.
I'm good. I'm good.
Mr.
I'm
Hunter,
fine.
would you like
Nope,
to speak?
I'm good.
No, okay.
I'm good.
Sorry about that.
Lots of
Maybe
hands.
at the end.
Absolutely. Lots of hands to follow. Through the chair to the committee, I will briefly, per your comments, Linda, just say, you know, Bill, I appreciate your deputation and thank you for your comments. It was a good coincidence that we had the implementation table today because we were able to share with you some of the work we hope to partner with tenants on this exact thing. You know, where are we going with volunteerism? Where have we been? We all want to ensure we engage and support the tenant voice. So I appreciate your comments, and it's nice that we were able to meet this morning and talk a little more in the weeds about that. So thank you for that. I will now transition to my comments. So through the chair to the committee, I'm going to share some brief remarks today. It is a verbal update on what's underway within engagement, partnerships, and communications in terms of that portfolio. Not only because we have an important presentation soon through Arlene Howells about the wonderful work that's been going on from a partnerships perspective, but also because, you know, we will be coming back in November at the next QTE meeting to provide more fulsome reporting in addition to what you see in the Q2 dashboard today. I'm particularly excited to make comments about Q2 in particular because that's when I joined the organization. So it's nice to reflect back on these are some very fundamental moments that stick with me as I get more grounded in the organization. So that was a very nice time in my personal memory, I guess, if I do say so. As you would have seen in the Q2 strategic directions dashboard, I will pick up on Grant's comments. There's been quite a bit underway in Q2 with over $30,000 in community activities fund dollars spent and out the door. Over 117 applications approved in Q2 alone. There's lots of activity and movement happening in Q2 that resulted in a number of really awesome celebratory events, including Mother's Day, Father's Day, Easter, Dragon Boat festivals, events that are certainly funded through CAF and supported by our staff, but absolutely led by our tenant volunteers. So I'm thankful to all those involved in making these things happen, be it equipment purchases or events themselves that took place in Q2. It also included the month of June, as I speak from a communications perspective. We had important celebrations related to Seniors Month, National Indigenous History Month, Filipino Heritage Month, Pride, and our third anniversary. So it was a very eventful Q2 that our communications team was able to support, along with the release of our spring issue of Senior Speak, which also went out over the course of Q2. You'll also notice in terms of community programs and partnerships, again, lots happening in terms of recurring programming. Q2 saw close to 300 programs underway, a mix of tenant driven or CAF funded, however you want to define it, and a mix of those provided by our wonderful agencies and partners. So it's been a very busy, exciting season. That trend continues up. And I'll conclude my comments. Just, I know more information will come in Q3 reporting and in future meetings, but just to give you a sense or draw your attention to what's happening right now. The summer, July, August, and September have been a very busy period. Dozens of barbecues at dozens of buildings. We had our summer regional meeting series in July, and we've had some meetings with STAC as well, talking about priorities like tenant experience survey, our use of space process, and the 2026 TSHC budget. So it's been a very busy piece of work in terms of engagement. And in terms of communications, the summer issue of Senior Speak is now out with some wonderful stories that I hope you have a chance to read. For those who don't know, it is available on our website and mailed out to all of our tenants and is available for translation. And the final milestone I'll mention here, you got a sneak peek of it in Tom's comments, is the recent launch of the intranet system. Just about a week ago now, on September 23rd, this new refreshed is an understatement system went live. It's really become this hub, one-stop shop that has transformed how staff at TSHC can engage with their job and what they need to know about their job, but also engage with each other. As you see with our Truth and Reconciliation reflection page, there really is an opportunity for staff and of all levels to share their thoughts and engage with what each other is thinking. So I just wanted to raise, that's a very exciting milestone when I think about our strategic enablers and our strategic directions around excellence and around being an employer of choice. I'm really excited to congratulate the communications team for the work to do that and all those who contributed, because it's really been a team effort. So the intranet is a really exciting move forward. And if a board member ever wants to walk through, please call me. I'm happy to show you around the new tool. With that, I'll wrap up my comments to the committee and pass it back to the chair unless there's any questions for me.
Thank you. Any questions for Deanna? Brenda?
The $30,000, that's CAF related activities?
That's
Yeah.
right. And that's
that's
spent dollars. Yeah,
And that's Q2?
correct. Yes.
So what's our yearly budget for this? Wasn't it 150, 200,000?
No, so through the chair to the committee, it's over 200,000.
Right.
I want to say between 230 and 240. I don't have the exact number in my head, Brenda, but it's about that amount.
And where are we with spending that amount of money at this point of the year?
Yeah, that just about that full allocation, I can pull the number for you through the chair to the committee, has been approved. So applications have been put in that those dollars are on track to be spent before the end of the year, I guess is the simple answer based on those approvals for CAF applications.
Yeah, just wanted to know whether we were underspending or
no.
overspending.
And if it helps for context, you will notice in the next round of reporting through the chair to the committee, there's a huge uptick because summer occurs. And there are quite a few events, and then we get into fall. So you're really going to see an uptick in that trend. I know that from the numbers myself.
And will there be a breakdown of how those dollars were allocated?
Yes, through the chair to the committee.
Activity type?
Yes, we can do so at a building or regional level. We'll also be able to do it against types of events or expenditures as well. And we'll bring that forward in a future meeting. Absolutely.
Right. Thank you.
That would be great. Again, I'm always interested in the ones that aren't spending and how we can help, like some of the buildings that might not. I'm sure that there's some buildings that there's lots of requests and some that need a little more help with them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
on my
great.
mind as well.
Thank you.
And one question, the intranet is just meant for staff and senior management?
Through the chair, yes, that is an internal tool. There is a website update happening to ease navigation, but that's external facing, but the intranet is internal to staff.
Internal, right. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, good question, Brenda. I was thinking the same thing.
Yes.
All right, and we're going to hear more about some of the engagement when we get to the last item today. So thank you, Deanna. We don't need an approval for that. So we're going to move on to item 13, which is our community safety unit report. And I think Grant and Grant, is Alan on the line? I didn't see him come on, but I might have missed him. Grant?
So through the chair and to the committee, unfortunately, we've been advised literally in the last 20 minutes that Toronto Community Housing and the CSU Albritton will not be able to attend our meeting this afternoon. So what we can do very briefly, if it's okay with with the committee is highlight that, as has been brought forward to the committee in previous meetings, the Community Safety Unit has prepared a summary report of activities that apply to the seniors portfolio. There's a sort of a standard in terms of the types of information they've been providing on a number of incidents, the types of things going on, some of the activities, proactive and reactive in the context of that. And we will follow up with the Community Safety Unit and ask for their attendance at future meetings as well, as we have planned already. Unfortunately, they're not able to be here this afternoon.
That's okay. I found the report actually much better than the original ones. It was very informative, and I don't know if anyone had any questions that Grant can answer, or we can hold it till the next meeting and speak to Alan about it as well. But if you have any questions, feel free to. Or even any comments that you have after you reviewed it, or things that we should be thinking about for the future. But I did find the quality of the reporting helpful.
Yeah.
And kind of the breakdown of the serious issues and property issues, and it is something that I think I was reviewing our commitments, and safety is kind of like at the top. It's hard to actually be involved in community activities if you don't feel safe in your building. So looking at that, so thank you for that, Grant, and for stepping in. All right, so I think what I'll do is we'll move that one and make sure that we have time for further discussion at the next meeting. But thanks, Grant. And if anybody has questions after the meeting, feel free to reach out. And then we have our last item, which is actually an exciting report. Speaking of innovation and strategic planning, that Deanna and Arlene will be walking us through. And I know that this was a long report, and we tried to actually signal that. I think it was well worth it to read every word. But I'll pass it over to Deanna. Are you going to introduce this and then bring it over to Arlene? Okay, thanks.
So I'll quickly start us. So through the chair to the committee, I am happy today to be here to introduce some introductory comments from Tom on behalf of this work, and Arlene Howell's not introducing. I think everyone on this call absolutely knows Arlene. It's very exciting for me in particular to see the culmination of this work. It was work that was envisioned, and I was able to join in as I joined the organization, as I said, back in Q2. So I'm very happy to see the partnership table push forward some recommendations on how we can continue to be innovative. So with that, I will pass it now to Tom to make some introductory remarks, and then over to Arlene to take us through her robust presentation. Thank you.
Great. Great. Thanks so much, Deanna. And just a bit of context before Arlene provides some more specific detail is, earlier in this year, the board was very specific and directive around this area of innovation and research, and what do we, where do we need to kind of move next to be seen as a leader in support for seniors. And so you'll recall one of the things that we had was the ONFA, right? There was a brief report, but I think it was very kind of informative around across the international spectrum, what has been happening in the area of supports in seniors housing, and we shared that with the board, and certainly hope that will inform some of our strategic work. And then the other aspect of that is what you're going to see today is Arlene's work around really a provincial environmental scan around what is a kind of a more coordinated way to provide supports for seniors. But before Arlene gets into that detail, this is just some further context around how Toronto Seniors supports our tenants, with the integrated service model. But as we evolve, what do we build on that base, and where we go? And so when you look at this overhead, what Arlene is going to be speaking to more specifically is on the right-hand side, is around the anchor agency, right? Is there an organization that can help us kind of coordinate some of the delivery of these supports for our tenants? And you'll hear from Arlene how other organizations have embraced it. We, in fact, have embraced it with Baycrest East Toronto Health Partners. And so that's the area of innovation that you're going to hear about more today. But just don't want the board to forget that other areas where our tenants receive support, one is that independent support, right? So the tenants living in the unit, they through their physician, through referral, they may have a PSW coming into their unit. We don't necessarily know about that relationship, but it is support. Then we have our tenant-led areas, and this is some of the previous discussions around community activity funds and whether, so what I hear of in so many of our buildings now is tenants coming together through the tenant circles. They have coffee hour, they're setting up movie nights, they're setting up yoga time. That's the tenant-led area of support. It's very organic. Then we have our agreements with individual agencies, right? So those are 54 agreements right now that we talk about. What that agency may deliver to one building, a couple of buildings, one program, several programs, but it's a more formal relationship of support with individual agencies, and we certainly want that to work to continue as well. There's also the support through the city divisions, right? So, and this was with the where there's the Toronto Public Library, the Recreation, Public Health. Those are the, and Deanna is now more closely linked with the city around where we can get those supports. And then what you'll be hearing about more today is this, is the innovation in the space around this kind of anchor agency and partnerships. And just also don't want the board to forget that underlying the work in all of these areas of support, right, continuing to be innovative, looking at some research, and I'm going to be bringing forward a plan. The team is going to be bringing forward a plan in the new year on more innovation and research. More of our focus. Evaluation is hugely important in all these areas, as well as our indicators. What are we measuring? How are we seeing outcomes? So I just want to ensure the board that in this work, we are really keeping our eye on what is going to be the efficacious way that we want to move forward to best support our seniors. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Arlene to kind of speak about this aspect of work around the coordinated partnership area. Arlene.
Thanks, Tom, and welcome, Arlene.
All right, thank you. Thanks through the chair, and thank you, Tom, for the background, and Deanna for the introduction. I'm very mindful of time. We're at 4:35, so I'll try to keep my remarks brief, so I might go through the slides a little quicker. If we could move to the next slide, please. So the reason we undertook this work was to look at the various models across the province, as the partnership table was curious about what was going on in, as Brenda calls it, wraparound care around the province. And so they asked us to look at what was being done at social and care program and learn more about consistencies, inconsistencies, and delivery models, and also looking to understand governance and evaluation to ensure that, what are people measuring, and how are those metrics manifesting themselves? And then can TSHC look at using a model or a combination of models to scale and improve program delivery so that people can continue to age at home? So that's why we undertook this work in the first place. The next slide will tell a little bit of a quick story about the process. So we started in January, did a whole bunch of on-site reviews with the program partners, and then concluded that, drafted the report, and we circulated this report in advance of coming to the Quality Tenant Engagement Committee with STAC, with the partnership table, with the leadership table for input, before we tabled this report as final today at the partnership table for your information. So the process was really to listen, learn, share, and then help the report is to help inform decisions for the organization moving forward. If we can move to the next slide, please. So the models we explored was the community they're all listed on the slide. We won't have time to go into each of the models individually. That is all, there's a chunk of ink dedicated to explaining each of them in the report. So it does talk about the similarities and differences. I will talk a little bit about that today. I would just like to thank all the participants who made time for us to sit with them and to learn, and also for all the folks internally and at the partnership table who took time to go out and do the learning with me. So my appreciation to everyone involved in the process. If we can move to the next slide, please. So what was common across all the programs? So this idea of having an anchor agency is very much something that's on the move. It is focusing on collective impact. They want to work together, whether it's health or care. So this is the social care aspect. People are really finding we need to work together across systems, be it housing, be it healthcare, be it social services. We need to work across systems, so that this is a very common theme, as you can imagine, across all of the organizations I sat with. They have someone coordinating that, because presently Deanna has a portfolio of 54 partnerships that she's managing. But if we were to try to respond to the over 300 program requests that Deanna had at the beginning of the year, and that might be only, maybe 150 now, and we tried to respond to that and create 150 new partnerships, the sustainability of that in the current size of Toronto Seniors Housing, it does not seem realistic. So having an anchor agency helps to manage the amount of partnerships the organization has to manage, while services can be directly delivered to tenants as they want and need it in the background. So this was common across all the programs. One of the other pieces that was also very common was this idea of trust, and it's not an idea of trust, it's actually the work to build trust. The agencies, the sectors, the systems don't know each other. So this stage of building trust across system, across people, across processes is actually quite material and quite important. It's tied very closely to, at the bottom left of your screen, you'll see governance and managing people as change levers. The trust and people management are really, really key to their success in building this idea of one team, one voice. So these are very important points to keep in mind about all of these programs. I also learned that from a coordination perspective and providing services and supports, tenants are not particularly interested in talking to their landlord about their health issues. So having an on-site non-housing coordinator to help build relationships towards the other systems that people need is actually builds greater trust between the tenant, the housing staff, and the social or healthcare staff. They're tenants more comfortable talking to people who are not related to their housing, because there's fear of their conditions being weaponized in their housing environment, and therefore them losing their housing because they have a condition. So in the models that I looked at, housing focuses on providing space for programs to be delivered and communicating with tenants about what's happening, and of course our work of stabilizing tenancies. The providers focus on program delivery and reporting. So there's very different roles, and we're not responsible for their program delivery and reporting. They are responsible for that. And then they also focus very much on co-design and community-driven asset-based community development, which harkens back to what Bill was talking about in his deputation as well. We need to make sure that the voices of all those concerns, so tenants, staff, partners, are all part of the equation. And then there's a real desire to collaborate and support aging at home, because everyone understands that this is all of our inevitability, and we'd like to build a better system for today and tomorrow. And then also the other common thing was that everyone's using similar but not the same outcome measures on key areas such as quality of life indicators. Very, very different indices that are being used to measure things like this. So these are some of the things that they're all doing it, but they're all doing it slightly different. So it was common that people are doing some evaluation, but whatever methodology or metrics or indicators they're using they do vary from program to program. If we could move to the next slide, please. Program options, you can have a program that is just building based. So in Toronto Seniors Housing, there are buildings, the tenants will tell you that they really only want a program for 423 Yonge. They don't want a program for 423 Yonge. And if there was a building across at College Park, they don't want the College Park people coming into their building. They want a different program at College Park. So this is building-based programs, that is an option. Then there are community and building-based programs, which is you have the program at 423 Yonge, but we could invite the folks from College Park over because they're close in our community, and we can collaborate in providing care. The social and healthcare system are focused on population health, not a specific population, as in our building alone, right? So they're much broader focus, whereas the tenants would prefer a more building based. The providers are looking for larger scale approach to help a larger population, because in most cases, the population around our buildings also need services and support. So there's those kinds of programs, and then there's the outreach programs where they have they're going out into the community to provide services, but they might use a building as a base from which to springboard their services. So those were the different models that were that we looked at in the review. If we can move to the next slide, please. Touch down on some of the key themes, but I did want to touch down on two things here. In terms of the on-site accessible non-housing coordinators, I want to stress again how important this is. In the integrated service model, when it was originally envisaged and originally set out, we were supposed to have care coordinators available to us to deliver services working with the senior services coordinators. That did start for a very, very short period of time, and then Mr. COVID came and raised that, that happened. And then everything kind of went scattered because everyone had to go back to their regularly scheduled programs to provide services back into the community. Having these coordinators are actually vital to the success, whether you call them a community connector, a care coordinator, a navigator, whatever title the programs give to them. These people are vital links to move the work of Brad's SSC team providing all the information they can possibly get their hands on about health and care services to saying, hey, you know what, Arlene's sitting over there and Arlene is a care coordinator. You can go and have a conversation with her and she can help you navigate. You may find in that conversation, you might have some more things you could learn about helping you to navigate the system. So this is a really vital and important piece that I think we need to really ask the health and care system if they can provide. And then understanding that there is no one size fits all. One of the things that was an important finding through this review was that in all cases, it's really the health system that's driving the change. Where the housing providers are working, that we are identifying the need because we're working with the vulnerable populations. The health system is actually holding the cards in terms of what services they can bring in and where those services can be provided depending on which Ontario Health team you're working with. So I wanted to land those two pieces in here. And finally, on this piece, on the policy piece, the fragmented funding is a challenge. But when we have this view of working as one team with one voice as one anchor agency, this fragmented funding becomes less of a problem because everybody's trying to put their money into a pot where the collective is working stronger than the individual to be able to meet the needs of the community. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So the next two slides offer you a summary of the things that we were looking at as part of our review and looking at what's similar and what's different. And you can see just generally speaking with the 80-20 rule, 80% of it is almost identical. The outlier here is OASIS. The OASIS program is not entirely different. It's quite different than the other programs, where the other programs are very health focused. The OASIS program is wellness focused. So if you on the next slide, you'll see that everybody has a relationship with Ontario Health or Ontario Health at Home, but OASIS does not. They are funded by philanthropic dollars, and so their work it's quite different, and it's actually a bit more scientific than it is focusing on trying to impact downstream social determinants of health. They are trying to impact upstream social determinants of health. So rather than trying to deal with someone who's coming to see you because they have diabetes, they're trying to talk to you. OASIS wants to talk to you when you think you might be drinking too much water, or you might be showing symptoms, or you're not exercising, and all of those things. They want to talk to you up here before you get into a diagnosed state so that they can help you manage your care as opposed to having to get into the system at the back end. So that's just a high level overview of the program tools that we found in the review. And then if we can move to the next slide. So in terms of unique context and considerations for TSHC, having a seniors mandate is considerably different than any of the other organizations we looked at. There are varying populations of seniors in the organizations that we spoke with, but this seniors mandate does present some unique legislative challenges for Toronto seniors, but it also presents the opportunity to do some really great things for the 15,000 tenants that we serve. There are some programmatic advantages that throughout our discussions with the various partners, they asked, so what do you guys do now? And then we talked about Community Connect Plus and the community activity funds, and they felt that those were very strong touchstones that we already have to give us an advantage in working with tenants and already working in co-design and all of those pieces, they feel like this is a programmatic advantage because many of these programs started without having those advantages and not having a community activities fund to be able to help people do the things that they want to improve their mental and physical health. So those are a unique context. Thank you. We can go to the next slide on the existing models. We do have 2 existing models within our organization working with East Toronto Health Partners and Baycrest. They are 2 anchor agencies that deliver services already within the community. So we're very fortunate to have that. And so this can provide good information as we look to potentially scale. But the reality of it is that the way the Ontario health teams are set up, what East Toronto does in East Toronto is not necessarily what's going to happen in West Toronto with West Toronto OHT. So this makes it interesting for us because we can't just say, oh, we want this thing to move here. We actually have to work with the OHT in West Toronto to say, can this work here, and how can we make this work here? And then so this moves to the next point about complex health and care system navigation. We have to work across 8 Ontario health teams. Most of the partners we spoke with, save for Baycrest and East Toronto Health Partners and the Nork Innovation Center, the rest of them are dealing with maybe 1, maybe 2. They're not dealing with as many OHTs, Ontario health teams, as we have to deal with. And so that creates a more complex situation for us from an implementation perspective. If we can move to the next slide, please. And so one of the other unique considerations is if we were to move to this anchor agency, the agencies would lead the partnership development and management of contracts in the background. They would coordinate reporting accountabilities, associated risks and liabilities with those relationships. We could establish a unified service agreement with the partner organizations that would be the anchor agencies, and then address operational partnership issues and concerns in a different setting, which TSHC and the partners could deal with. So what that means is that it really pushes, if we're going to get more and more program requests from tenants to have more needs met, it means that the anchor agency can absorb those needs. We identify, and they can absorb, if they can, with the community partners, bringing either new or existing community partners together to say, how can we do this better? How can we, instead of having 4 PSW agencies coming into a building and going in at different times, maybe we can coordinate that so they can all 4 would still come in, but we can use those resources better where they don't have to sit for 3 hours waiting for an appointment. We might actually be able to service another person who might need a PSW service in that building differently. We don't get involved in that conversation. The health and social care partners get involved in that conversation. We would provide the space. We would support the relationship building between staff, tenants, and providers. And then we would do the communications and informing the partners about what the needs are from the tenant's perspective. If we can move to the next slide, please. So our current state is there are many programs, and as I just explained, it's the scalability of managing all the requests is the challenge. And with this approach, with the consideration for an anchor agency approach, it gives us much more opportunity to continue to meet the needs of tenants, which will only get more as people age at home, and we want them to age at home because that's what we're here for. But the needs will grow, and this gives us an opportunity to meet those needs as they grow. If we can move to the next slide, please. The partnership table made 5 recommendations. In the interest of time, I'm not going to be able to go through all of them, but I will give the synopsis of this slide is that we should continue our multi-pronged approach, and that we should look at expanding this coordinated approach to service delivery into an area or building that currently is not as well served as it could be, and that has high needs. The next recommendation talks about, on the next slide, that we should coordinate the capacity with an anchor agency and develop this, well, not so much as a pilot, but an expansion that would facilitate more access to services, test a new housing dashboard, which is something we're working on with Ontario Health at Home and Toronto Community Housing, investigate some specific research findings around social determinants of health for particularly people living in social housing, older adults in social housing. And then our work could contribute to a larger body of evidence-based work that can demonstrate positive outcomes for community and system collaboration. Because if we do this expansion, we would be able to contribute to, if we did X, we saw Y, therefore Z. So it gives us that problem-solving approach to our work. And then on the next slide, we talk about in a bit more detail the work should be driven by standards that would be developed by TSHC to say these are the things that we think we need as a minimum standard in order to keep this work moving forward. As I said before, it's really the health system driving it, not us, but they're asking us to say, tell us what you want and let's see how we can help you get there. That's the advice of the partnership table, because the partnership table says, you need to tell us what you want and we need to do more. So this is our health and social care partners are telling us that. And then finally, in order to do that, we know that unfortunately we can't go shake a money tree, as my mother would say. So we have to find the appropriate level of resourcing, both human and financial, in order to deliver the program. So the expansion of the program. So I think that's the next slide speaks to the funding ask, which we have put together an ask already, and we're waiting for some word back on whether or not we're going to be able to get any funding from other sectors to be able to do this work together. So if we move to the next slide, please. And so in terms of next steps, pretty clearly outline what we're going to be doing. We hope to be able to move forward before the end of the year with finding a site that's appropriate and engaging with tenants, staff, and others on whether there's support for that. And then I will continue to do my work with Ontario Health and Toronto Community Housing on the dashboard, and then we would be looking at implementation considerations and planning as we move forward. And I will be sharing the report with the participating organizations as well. So I think that's it.
Thank you for that speed report, and I think that I mean, this is good timing in terms of going into a strategic planning process, and hopefully, actually, as we do that, we could have some greater dialogue about this very rich document. But I'll open it up to any board members if you have any questions or comments. I have a few, but I'll let others go first. Well, maybe I'll just make okay, go ahead, Brenda.
I really appreciate this report. It's very, very interesting. We don't have much time, so I'll limit my comments, but I really want to say I have grave, grave issues and disagreement with an anchor agency model. What got us into this problem was the lack of accountability and control of agencies that were in our buildings or wanting to be in our buildings. And we are unique in that we are accountable to City Council. City Council had a certain direction. We're supposed to be hands-on to some extent in our reporting relationship. And the minute, in a sense, partnership table will give you a bureaucratic solution. Interagency models. If I had $1 for every meeting I spent on interagency, I'd be a rich woman. But interagency doesn't necessarily deal with on-the-ground service delivery. I recognize the limitation that all organizations have, including us, with resources. But I think, I see it breaking down into social, recreational, health-related, and engagement. We are starting to do the social recreational, and we'll improve on that. The missing piece has been the health piece. We obviously need to work and partner with people on this. Great models here, different things we can learn from. But I would strongly, strongly suggest we be very careful about using an anchor agency partner, because that is a step removed from our control, accountability, and transparency. We won't be able to control it once you have an anchor agency. And I don't care how many recommendations you get, how many frameworks, how many agreements you have. The minute you have, and that's why often governments do have other agencies delivering things, because they don't want to be responsible. Okay. So I support many of the suggestions here, but and I can go into it later at another meeting. I really, really caution the board and the committee about going with an anchor agency model because I think that will be problematic. And Councillor Crisante, I welcome at some point your comments because our relationship and our accountability is to the city of Toronto. And the minute you have that one step removed, then you're reducing accountability, transparency, and control. And I would be very cautious with that. Otherwise, lots of great ideas and suggestions and directions here, and I appreciate the work.
Oh, great. Linda?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great, through the chair too. So, Brendan, appreciate your comments, and I do think we will really need to delve into this more. Whether it's through the strategic planning process, because I think we can't ignore what has been done across the province, somewhere like Ottawa Community Housing, which is ahead of us around how they have been able to use an anchor agency to kind of coordinate care, and they're having success there. So. And we have to look at who is best to deliver what. And so let's we'll kind of get into it. And remember, Baycrest is doing this for us right now in this model. And I feel that our tenants in those buildings are getting strong support. And so that is something that we can look at and consider and for ourselves. So thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, just a recommendation that I would make. The one thing that I found a little bit missing in the report, particularly focused on Toronto, was the diversity of Toronto. I was once involved in an audit of a building because we were looking at an anchor agency, and I'm not as opposed to having actually lead agencies. The issue that came up was the variety of services that were coming in, and the reason for that, and it was related to cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, languages. Somebody who actually is Italian speaking may want an Italian agency. Somebody may be going to a day program that is focused on the Filipino community. And I think we just, there's nothing that maybe I missed it, but maybe just pepper that in there because I think it's a consideration for Toronto. I think you actually really captured the piece in terms of the complexity of the Ontario Health Team. And I would recommend that this is presented to the Ontario Health Team leadership table, because I think that what you do want to do is stay local. I think, as great as, so one, and I think you actually commented on that, what works well in North Toronto might not work well at Sherbourne and Dundas. Kind of making sure that the local is there. So yeah, those were my two comments around that. But go ahead, Tom. Maybe I missed the cultural diversity.
No, through the chair to the committee, and that's a really great point, right? To build on this, and I think that would be something that even is more kind of unique, right? When you look at how we want to be leader in the support for seniors in our building, this whole aspect of diversity, right, inclusion, is I think where we could excel. And so it is, thank you, it's really important that we weave that into the work that we do. And I know that even right now, some of the work that the UHN is doing with our volunteer program and diversity, and those are factors. So good to keep that in the forefront.
Great. And so next steps. It sounds like the committee. It sounds like there's this, but I think it may be related to the strategic planning. But next step for us and for the board and for TCHC, anything that, or TSHC, anything else that you want? Oh, the other thing I was going to comment, sorry, is that you did actually make the point early in the report about the high number of seniors in TCHC, and related to our. That's probably another like unique thing for Toronto, like considering, what is our boards thinking about the responsibility or the support to seniors that happen to be in the same local community but are not living in seniors housing, and kind of thinking about that, and maybe just a consideration for the future in terms of looking at how we might be actually able to work together. Because if you're going to an agency and saying, we just want this in our buildings, and there's 100 seniors across the street that live in a TCHC building, how do we kind of bring that together?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the creative tension, that that whole thing about whether it's site specific, building specific, or broader community base, once again was the original thing that brought us to this, because of the one out in the East End at Greenwood, the problems when they had a hub there which we had to pull back on because of this issue of people coming into the building, et cetera.
Yeah.
I think there are workarounds around that, and I think we can, but I think that is certainly something we need to grapple with. What is our obligation to people other than people out in our buildings? So when you start extending your responsibility to a broader community base, that's a slightly different mandate. And I think we would need probably some direction from the city on that, whether we want to extend it that far. So I think it is a tension. I think it can be a healthy tension.
Yeah,
And
a starting point maybe though, like the TCHC senior. I'm not saying every
Yeah.
senior in the community, but
No,
you know,
I understand. Yeah.
So, you know, would that be an interesting, you know, stepping stone to be able to
Yes.
to present? Tom?
Yeah, so to chair to the committee, and so even like when Arlene was doing this work, like we have been looking at this whole aspect of kind of coordination of care, and there is one particular location that we're looking at, and there's one of our buildings which is not more than 400 feet away. So then the question is, how can you get, if you can situate certain organizations in the one building, how can they help with the other? So like we're this is work has been churning kind of behind the scenes too, right? This is presenting to you what is happening across the province, and then subsequently, how do we strategize or continue to operationalize, the supports for these services? Because it's going to look any different way. And don't forget that this idea of an anchor agency or lead agency, whatever you want to call it, it is one way. It is one way in which we're going to deliver these supports. I showed you 5 at the beginning, and this is one potential area to build on. So don't want to lose sight of that either, because it's not an all or nothing for us, because we are so large and across so many regions and so many health teams. Good, thanks.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And we do have some case management function in home care. Their home care coordinators can perform some of that coordinating function and case management function. So, there are those resources we can tap into without having to defer to an outside body.
And we might need to define what anchor, because I think anchor doesn't mean that you have care coordinators in the building for people that are eligible for home care. They would still be eligible for home care. So I think this is a great beginning. Arlene and Deanna, like, congratulations. What a substantive report, and really helpful. I think that the board, I think it went out to the entire board, but we may want to actually just note it at the next board meeting, or because I think it's really helpful. And I think for strategic planning, it will be really helpful. So congratulations. Excellent work. And I think it's great that people have comments. We should have comments, right? So, but lots of work ahead, but thank you. That's a massive report and a good one.
What's the next steps on this report then? Will it go, does it go to the full board? Is it worked on with the committee? What are the next steps?
Yeah, so through the chair, Brenda, it's going out, first of all, to the people who were part of creating the report, so all the organizations I spoke with, and then when going back to the partnership table in October 22nd, we're meeting with them to say if we're going to look at expansion, where might that be? So we have to go and look at what's available in terms of sites that we would be able to consider. And Brad and Deanna and Tom and I have been having those conversations. And in terms of like practically speaking, those are the big practical next steps to figure out whether we can, and then looking at do we have the appetite to have a coordinated service in a specific area, and who would be able to do that.
So is the decision making at the partnership table, or is it at the board?
This is, I believe, I'll defer to Tom, but I think this is operational, is it not, Tom? Like, as part of your innovation and innovation work?
Yes, so through the chair to the committee. So this is, I think how it was kind of summarized or framed in this report around, like, we maybe using anchor agency wasn't the best, and I think Arlene through the report kept saying it's like an extension of, right? So this is an extension of work that we're doing. And it was really when we were at the partnership table, they kept saying, like what is being done in Baycrest or with East Toronto, that has its advantages to kind of expand that into other particular areas. So kind of that's what we have been working, and what you are seeing today is kind of examples of what has been happening across the province. What can we take from some of those? What can we learn? What perhaps what we don't do? So that's where we are with that. So we will certainly come back to either this committee or the board, around, if we have kind of a success in terms of how we could expand in one particular area, we can bring it here to share how it will roll out.
And this work aligns with the goals of, if we think about at a board level, our goals are we do want to actually have services coming into our building.
Yes.
We're not actually saying at this point that it's going to be one model and but it's actually.
I understand, but I'm just concerned that what I'm hearing is decision making is being somewhat relegated to the partnership table.
No.
And at what point will it come back to our committees and boards for us to be making decisions on this? And are we ceding already our ability to make decisions on the models and choices of moving forward? I don't hear any answers to that.
Yes, yes. So through chair, so I like Brendan. I get this was kind of an information report, right, to this committee, and helping to inform, right, our strategy, kind of affirm what we are doing, or we need to adjust what we're doing. So if the idea of a co-lead is something that the board is saying, like, we don't want to head down that road anymore. I mean, my question would be, well, what do we do with that Baycrest? I mean, Baycrest went from 4 buildings, they're now in 11. Our tenants are benefiting from that. So I just, what we are trying to do here is, take an informed, kind of measured approach in terms of how we provide these supports through the various ways through our tenants. So I didn't see the partnership table as making this decision for us, right? Like, they're just helping to inform how we want to work, and who might we work with, how could we do that. But ultimately,
so maybe to answer my question is, we need a little further explanation of the role of Baycrest and who makes what decisions in that arena, in that quadrant. So in terms of what services, who gets it. If you can explain, not now, obviously, but but I think if you're proposing that that's an anchor agency and something we've done already, well, then I have some questions about, well, exactly what is it? What is that relationship, and who makes what decision? And how does it come back to our senior management team and board? If it does at all.
And too, I have to get in one word, like, too. So even like with that, when I think back what we shared around Baycrest, like the amount of tenancy engagement, intercepts that they did, door knocks that they did for those buildings, that was what were the needs of the tenants, and then subsequently Baycrest introduced. So it was the tenants who were helping to identify those priorities for support. So we can bring back kind of a refresher on how that is structured and delivered, and the support. So thanks. Okay.
And if I can just add, I think we're in an unfortunate time where the healthcare system is trying. Why should these organizations be involved? Because everybody shares that same belief that people should be cared for in the community.
Absolutely.
The resources should be there. And so there is actually, I think there's some good reasons why the health partners are actually wanting to partner with us. And we haven't always had this kind of cooperation. So I think I think you're building on a strength that's worked in one area and seeing how we might be able to roll it out. But it sounds like we should bring it back. Arlene, go ahead, Arlene. Last words to you, and then we'll close up.
I just want to reflect on the comment around like a Baycrest kind of model. When we look at the number of partners we have at Toronto Seniors Housing, we say we have 54 partners. In the model that Baycrest, and they're part of that number 54, but Baycrest actually manages 20 other relationships behind the scenes to deliver services and supports to the 11 buildings and the 436 tenants that they serve, to better deliver services that people need. But we don't have the interaction directly with the 22 others. They do deliver a plethora of services, and then we find out how are things going, what are the deltas, what are the differences, what are there gaps, are there issues, and that's the work that sometimes Brad and Deanna have to manage between the teams, or our contact at Baycrest has to manage with the delivery partners in the background. But they are doing they are taking that responsibility of managing all of the scheduling and the services in the background, and we work with them to deliver those services. So it's work that we're already doing.
And we have a formal agreement outlining roles and responsibilities with Baycrest. But be interested in seeing that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So we'll let the continue. I think the discussion will continue, and it's great to have the questions and to hear about that, and to maybe hear about other. There are many buildings that have had actually strong relationships.
Yes. No,
with
I understand
organizations, and to sort of see that too. But good questions, Brenda.
Yeah. Good discussion. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Well, this was a good meeting. Lots of information and good work. Thank you to all the staff for preparing and for your commitment on this day and every day to the communities that we live in and serve. At this point, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Lauren, seconded by Jim. All in favor? Terrific. And if you get a chance, I would recommend that you go go outside and enjoy this beautiful day and take a moment to reflect on the beautiful land that we live on. Have a great day, and
thank you, Linda. Great job. Great job chairing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.